When you leave the house, do you bring a bag with you, or can you fit everything in your pockets? I know for me, depending on what I'm wearing, I can fit the essentials in my pockets, but that's only really when I'm wearing men's pants. I bet you could see where I'm going with this. Today, I want to talk about the relationship between gendered clothing and independence in the Western world. In this series, we'll talk about how fashion and gender equality are related and zone in on the importance of a gender-neutral fashion. To show this relationship, we will specifically be looking at the history of pockets and purses. I bet we all know at least one person who carries their entire life in their purse. But not everyone uses their bag in this way. Last episode, we mentioned that all clothing items can be used for a variety of different purposes. Style is a means of communicating sex, age, gender, culture, historical era, and geographic area. This goes for purses too. The significance and practicality of the bag changed over time because fashion is culturally defined. With that being said, you might have subconsciously associated purses with femininity, as you did with heels. The reality is, purses aren't inherently feminine. In fact, they were used by both men and women for centuries before our time. It was only with the invention of the pocket that things began to shift. Changes in the type and number of pockets came from fashion itself and the need to carry different things. These changes were based on gender roles and social class. So what does this say about one's independence in the world? And how does it relate to pockets, or the lack thereof? To understand this, we have to take a blast to the past. From ancient times until the Middle Ages, both men and women wore bags for practical reasons. They were durable and made to last. Oh, and let's not forget, the richer the wearer, the more sophisticated the bag. The conversation surrounding bags only truly began to change when the pocket was invented. They allowed the wearer to hide all of the things they were carrying to give them some privacy. But don't get too excited, ladies. The pocket was only sewed into men's garments at first. This meant that most men ditched the bag for the more convenient alternative. At the time, women only had pockets that were tied to the waist. They were typically worn under layers of clothing. This meant that women had to practically undress to reach their belongings in public. So basically, this impractical pocket gave them a false sense of privacy and independence. Moving into the 18th century, big hoops and large petticoats were being replaced with form-fitting dresses. Pockets were said to disturb the female silhouette, so many women stopped wearing them. From this point forward, the bag became increasingly gendered. Men attached small coin purses to their belts because hanging bags were too feminine. The lack of pockets pushed women towards fashionable alternatives, such as the chatelaine and reticule bag. The reticule was a dainty feminine bag that was often decorated in tassels, fringes, and embroidery, and the chatelaine was a pouch that was strapped to the waist. You could barely fit anything in this bag. Their size and extravagant look basically emphasized the fact that women had less access to money and property and therefore did not need a functional pocket. The bag suggested that all a woman had to do was look pretty. By the end of the century, bags were considered a feminine accessory, and the pocket was eliminated from women's dress altogether. This created a whole other problem for women. While the French Revolution was a time that challenged the ideas of privacy, property, and propriety, the lack of concealed pockets limited women's ability to navigate public spaces alone. To put it simply, the less women could carry, the less freedom they had out in the world. They had to depend on the men because they could carry all the essentials for them. Women's clothing was constricting during this time. A group that advocated for comfortable and functional women's clothing established the Rational Dress Society in 1881 to combat this issue. The group hit a milestone at the turn of the century when they began pushing for pockets. This came during a time when men's suits were being made with around 15 pockets. Women constantly voiced their need for pockets, but no one was listening. So they began making instruction manuals on how to sew your own pockets into skirts. By 1910, the suffragette movement was in full swing, and with it, entered the suffragette suit. The suit was made with 7 or 8 visible pockets. According to a 1910 New York Times article, the pockets were all in sight and all easy to find, even for the wearer. Now, this sounds like good progress, but is it really? The fact that these pockets were visible says a lot about what society thought about women's rights to privacy and property. While men had plenty of hidden pockets, women didn't have the same luxury. Apparently, people even thought that women would carry weapons in public if they had pockets. Anyways, women were finally given pockets when they were encouraged to work during the First World War. But that didn't last long because the post-war woman was expected to revert back to feminine form-fitting clothing. This meant no more pockets. As a result, the handbag industry is booming and continues to do so because we still don't have pockets. Or if we do, they're very, very small. Actually, a recent study found that pockets in women's jeans are about half the size of men's. Now, in a way, the handbag industry encouraged female independence. But the lack of pockets reinforced their dependence. Speaking of which, I'm sure we're all familiar with fake pockets or pockets on women's pants. Have you ever bought the perfect pair of pants and then realized there's no pockets? Now, the reason why some pants have pockets is because pockets would disturb the female silhouette, similar to the neoclassical look. I guess that makes sense if you like the slim fit style, but it also says a lot about how we as a society view women. Christiane Dior once said, "Men have pockets to keep things in, women for decoration." This witty remark highlights the dominant ideology that is upheld in the fashion industry. That is, that men's dress is made to allow movement for doing things, and women are simply busy being looked at. This reinforces sexist ideas of gender. But hey, if you like the pants, pocket and wear it for you. While pockets and handbags may seem unimportant, they are in fact political, as they create an obvious gender divide, perpetuate sexist ideologies, and represent our patriarchal systems. Although purses were first seen as a powerful symbol of female independence, the lack of pockets reinforced women's dependence on men. The less women could carry at a time, the less freedom they had to navigate public spaces alone. Whether you believe it or not, this idea exists in the modern day. The reduced size of women's pockets highlights a limited view of what women can and cannot do. And the fact is, women want pocket equality. Thankfully, you can now own handbags that are practical and fashionable. With so many different styles, we're seeing more and more men rocking the handbag. I would even argue that the tote bag, fanny pack, and satchel are now universally known as unisex accessories. We still have a long way to go, but I think we're on the right track to a genderless closet. Let me know in the comments below what you'd like to learn next, and if you'd like this episode and want to learn more, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.